Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Red, White, and You Show with your host, the military medium. Today, I have with me Dustin Shryock, there we go, of the Headstrong project. Dustin, welcome to the Red, White, and You Show, man.
Thank you, Dean. It's really cool to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you got a lot of stuff going on. I know that you're currently serving as the Deputy Director of Field Operations for the Headstrong program, correct?
Right.
Okay, very cool. So, when I was looking at Headstrong, of course, the phrase of healing the hidden wounds of war, I know they do so many things. But before we get into Headstrong, share with the listeners and viewers a little bit who Dustin is.
Yeah, you got it, Dean. So thanks again. What's up,
Absolutely.
everybody at home? I come from a military family, and military service was certainly not expected of me, but it's something that I knew would just be fulfilled at some point in my life, in some manner. So I end up choosing the Army, a long lineage of not only Army service members, but Navy, etc. So ended up in the Army. I dropped out of college to enlist versus sticking around to commission. And spent about a year in college, decided I wanted to go now. In hindsight, we're still there, right? Still operating hard.
Right.
But I really felt like it was, the calling was immediate in 2003. I really felt, Baghdad popping off the way it did, Iraq going live. It was kind of just needed to happen in my life. So end up enlisting 5.5, 6 years later, rotated out and went back to school in New York City. Grew up in Northern California. Did just about 3 years total in Baghdad. I never went anywhere else. I would do my layovers in Kuwait and then into the real world that is Baghdad. So that was interesting. Fast forward a little bit, end up in school, New York City. New York's a wild place. More or less the request of family friends, because I did go home for about 6 months, and that was a wild adventure in de-evolution of someone's mental health care. And I can get into that in a little bit, but I have not left New York since I got here in 2009. Just been running around town ever since.
So you're in. Are you currently in New York State or New York City?
Manhattan, City.
Oh, okay, all right, the city area. Okay, very cool. So a far cry. It's completely different from the state of New York itself. It's almost like it's separate country, right?
Feels like that sometimes.
Right.
Oh,
awesome. Well, so here you are. You basically get out to go back to school. Kind of immersed back into the civilian culture. Did you start to find that, right away, here you were living this one life, self-identifying as a soldier for so many years, and most of that time of your enlistment serving overseas, right, in combat theaters. Did you have a hard time reclimatizing, reacclimating back to the civilian culture?
completely. And it's a really good point, because I think it is one of the top tier issues going on with people who do extreme things, and then you try to relate that back to a general community. So yes, I will qualify that I was raised in a military family, so it should have been second nature, right, coming home. But it could not have been further from the truth. In my reality, my ground reality was I was suddenly lost even among my own family of service members.
Right.
So chalk it up to generational issues, chalk it up to bouncing out poorly, and really not using tools provided, or maybe the tools were poor provided by the military, maybe.
Why do you, let me ask you, Dustin, real quick before you continue with your story, why do you feel that you were having a hard time even relating to your family, your military a family of military that's been there, done similar things, like all of a sudden now you're even having a hard time relating to them, people that have been in similar circumstances. Why do you feel that? Because I know there's other folks out there like this. Why do you feel that you were feeling that or in that space?
There's probably not been enough self-reflection on that question, even so many years later. But I will say it was not having tools built in place in the first place.
Right.
It was not having the self-control to actually meditate on this is about to be a shock, and probably still being young and ridiculous, but even more hypercharged. Because I was out of a war zone.
Right.
3 weeks later, I was home. That's
Right.
not a joke.
Right.
That was it.
Yep.
I was a part of that stop loss crew. They kicked us out real quick, and I think it was a full lack of that full 360 holistic, safety net.
Sure.
I had holes, big time holes in mine, but I think it was the accumulation of not being prepared, right? So actually doing the anti of what I was trained to be, which was prepared, but it was not being prepared to exit. And then having those holes, I got caught in them. So not relating to my family, right? Not being able to even talk about it. Yeah, that was some of the issue.
Right. Right. Well, and it's interesting, isn't it? And even if you have a veteran to the left or right of you that you trust, maybe a family member, that if you don't even feel that you can relate to them saying, I get it, maybe you were in Vietnam or World War II or Korea, whatever other, war, conflict, whatever, and saying that you respect their time and their service. But at the same time, it's almost like comparing a cell phone to a landline. They're both phones, but at the same time, they're different.
Right.
And it's like, how do you explain a cell phone versus, so it's kind of like, yeah, they are similar, but at the same time having a hard time. What would you say that's kind of a similar or a correct analogy in a sense of kind of where you are trying or where you were trying to bridge the saying, well, I can't relate to that. Like they served like 20 years before I even thought about going in. And, here I am now, and it was completely different.
Yeah. And, I think you bring up a really, really valuable point, which is in reflection, I recall many a time trying to get stories out of these people, right? And it was like,
Right.
they didn't want to talk about it because they had the same affliction that I still think occurs,
Right.
which is not being prepared to talk about it, not having
Right.
the tools or the energy left,
Right. Right.
to go into this stuff.
Well, who wants to relive that shit?
Exactly.
It's like that. Those are those moments that hurt are the unpleasant parts of your time in overseas, right?
Right.
Who wants to relive that?
Yeah, no one.
Nobody wants to. Let's talk about our feelings. Nobody really likes to do that, but we understand, or we've found, right, that that's a good first step to do. But don't let me stop you. So you made this transition. You were having a hard time. How did you get linked up with Headstrong? Like here you are, a veteran. You're out now. You're going to school. You're struggling. Did you have periods of, hey, screw this shit. I would rather either A, check out, or B, maybe not exist on this plane of existence anymore?
Totally.
As far as taking your own life?
Yeah, those thought patterns were starting to occur, and that's what actually drove I gotta knock this off right away.
Right.
So, even to back up, right upon exit of the military, I land at home and I'm a terror. Let me just say that right now. I was a terror, not sleeping, doing all the wrong things, being wild, on the verge, absolutely on the verge of getting in trouble. I don't know how I made it. I think that's a common theme. Whew, right?
How did I live through that? Right.
I thought Baghdad was wild. San Diego was a little wilder.
All
Being
right.
hypercharged in Pacific Beach, I was not done testing my metal. Um, and there was going to be run-ins with the authorities. It was just, I was on that path.
Right.
So that happened. So really at the request of a dear family friend, I actually linked up with the founder of Volt Information Sciences, a World War II veteran himself. And I started driving him. I was more or less his glorified chauffeur for a while. And it was the best 9 months of mentoring I really could have ever had. And he says, you need to get yourself together. You need to get the hell out of here. And why don't you go to New York? Why don't you go settle down in the world's biggest city? It's just chaotic enough, and it will teach you lessons. It will correct you, right? You will not have a smart mouth there. The city has a way of regulating itself, people included. So I took it seriously, and he said, get in school, get your life together, and just ground yourself there. So that's what I did. But in that process of getting myself to New York at the request of this gentleman, Jerry Shaw, who's since passed, he was instrumental in setting me up here. And on top of that, I started getting involved with school, and right away I started getting involved with veteran schools because that's just where I thought to land. So at my school, ended up co-starting really with a few other friends, the Student Veterans Club through SVA. Thank God Derek Blumke had the wherewithal to start that initiative. So we ended up doing a chapter on our campus, and that was the start of the veterans initiatives I've been involved with ever since. So with that, I end up in finance after an internship at the White House. So I really got to know the veteran landscape at the 30,000-foot view because I was on the Joining Forces team with Rod Lewis and Brad Cooper, who also helped me ground myself because I was an older intern at the White House and still on the verge of a little bit of a wild hair, right?
I got to ask you, you did the intern at the White House. How was that gig? Like,
Insane.
how was insane?
I don't even know how to, I still struggle with saying how cool it was. Best few months of my life. I was a summer 2012 intern in the office of the First Lady, working on Joining Forces. So as a veteran, helping just manage really the initiative that Joe Biden and Michelle Obama started together. So that was a trip in itself. I mean, I would stay late as many times as possible. I knew this was a once in a lifetime event that the White House would allow me into the White House, right? So I took advantage so hard. I talked to as many people as I could. I would bug the Secret Service all the time. I would bug the other interns, the staff members. I mean, just amazing.
And are they pretty accommodating on that level as far as much as they could?
Yes. So I was in the Obama White House. Politics aside, I took an opportunity to be at the forefront of policymaking. That's just what I wanted to be a part of. And they are wildly accommodating. I mean, it is one of the best internships, in my opinion, in the United States for policy, for understanding how a government actually works. Because you're answering phones, you're
Sure.
helping write policy and memo. You're being invited to lecture series with most of the staff, most of the cabinet, right? The access was intense, and it wasn't about nepotism. It was just about understanding how a bureaucratic system operates, how it regulates, and then the day-to-day, which is, right. That is why, having seen it, I am surprised we ever get things done because it's intense. It really is intense. There's a lot of checks and balances. I quit believing conspiracy theories after seeing. I was like, I don't think you understand that. No, it's not true.
Right.
So that, yeah, it was intense. As an intern, I would I'd do it again. I saved what I could, what they allowed me to take home. Most of it goes in the National Archives when you're done. Any note, any pad you write on, really, it gets taken from you. There's some things they give you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I would do it again. I recommend if people can, ignore the cabinet. It doesn't matter. Just go. Try to apply for something like that, just to see it. I think it was an invaluable process and experience. But so I ended up in finance right after that, and I had a lot of opportunities because it's a rare thing. I was older, I was a veteran, so people were calling me saying, "Why don't you check this out? Why don't you stay in DC? Why don't you come back to New York?" that was the first and last time I was offered things like that. So I ended up in finance. A friend of mine said, "Why don't you come check out this hedge fund? It's pretty new. We're going to do some wild stuff here." So I did. And that is when I started meeting the Headstrong folks. So right around 2011, 2012, Headstrong started in 2012. Right around that time frame, Zach Iskel, with a couple of the guys who were in finance, Zach, was running a media company and a jobs company. He started shopping around town the idea of Headstrong. And I was a part of another organization called Battle Buds. And I was just helping with that idea. And Team Red, White, and Blue was starting to get geared up. So I was messing around with those folks, just trying to understand the landscape, be helpful where I could be helpful. So Battle Buds gets rolling. And a few of the clinicians that were instrumental in Headstrong, they came through Battle Buds to talk about this new idea. An outpatient mental health clinic, more or less, early on, that was providing cost-free healthcare, bureaucracy-free healthcare, immediate healthcare, and limitless, per the person's needs. The idea of getting them better, but the idea of not taking them after 12 sessions, 24 sessions, and saying, best of luck, we've done what we could with you. It was about getting someone better and meeting them where they were. So it was all tailor-made. So this idea is floating around. I go, wow, this is novel. This is incredible. At the time, I was still at the VA trying to get help.
Sure.
With that, with the opposite model of what they were talking about. And that was where my disbelief in mental health care started, was at the VA. I go, it's ridiculous. I actually feel worse every time I leave this place. Like, I don't understand why. Maybe I'm broken. So that's what I settled on. I'm just like, I was not an Army Ranger. I was not, a wild person back then. I had a pretty normal job. And I did some extraordinary stuff, which was mind-blowing. But it's like, if I'm having this trouble, if I can't even figure this out, I think I'm broken. It just doesn't work for me. So that was my mental health philosophy going into understanding what Headstrong was about to be. And it took me 2 more years to finally go, maybe I should call these folks. They seem to have it figured out. They've got it going on. So I did. And it was really at the request of other people that were engaged with Headstrong, 6 months before I got involved. And I was going through this big life change, kind of ending one life and getting into another solo, and reached out to Headstrong, and the rest is really history. I had just entered a graduate program at NYU, just entered into Headstrong. And at the end of it, one of the board members and Zach Iskel just pulled me aside and said, "Hey man, we want to take this across the country. Do you want to stick around for the ride? Like, do you want to help us? Do you want to go forward us into San Diego, Houston, Chicago, wherever?" And I said, "Yeah, let's do it. I think I'm ready." So that was the start. That was me graduating Headstrong, graduating from NYU, and having these guys say, "Let's take a ride. Let's see what we can do with this thing." So I've been around really from the beginning, in a way.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, so that kind of brings you up to the beginning of starting your partnership, maybe we can call it, with Headstrong. Why don't you go in a little bit, Dustin, and share with us, what Headstrong is all about? We know it's helping veterans, but really kind of the bare bones of what they do, and a little bit maybe how they do it, or maybe from your perspective as well.
So it's an interesting model. It's completely community-based in a way. It's headquartered now remotely, but it was out of New York City really since inception. And it was founded with a partnership with Weill Cornell Medicine. So what they decided to do was create a program that was truly tailor-made. So a person comes to us, I can't sleep. Great, let's start there. I'm having marital problems. Perfect, let's start there. All right. So that was the initial approach. It's human-centric. We're going to treat the person, right, from the symptoms they bring us, and then we'll get into the life cycle of treating the whole idea. What is the actual trauma? Where's the therapy needed? It is cost-free, still is to this day, and it's limitless per what the person needs, right? That was the initial idea. So removing some of that bureaucracy, getting a hold of someone right away, and walking them through the process. Now, the back end of this thing is decentralized per market. So what we do is we try to pocket best-in-class mental health care clinicians around a community. So if you think about Seattle or San Diego or New York
Right.
City, even, it's not going to be one zip code. We'll pick about 10, maybe 15 zip codes, right? Have 10 or 15 clinicians kind of scattered around the community to, again, create that access, right? That's really important. We try to meet people where they are, not only in therapy, but in geographic stance. So that was one of the other, pieces of the model. And then it's just quality. Having seriously best-in-class, highly trained clinicians, being able to specialize in what the person's bringing to them, we create that partnership. And we do that at the very beginning. So as someone reaches out on the internet, via the website, right away, usually within 48 hours, they're contacted, 24 to 48 hours. Sometimes it's much quicker. We do just a very soft initial intake, high level, where are they? What are they looking for? Etc. So it's a gentle way to get someone moving quickly. From there, we create just a one-time psychiatric evaluation. And that is just to prepare the client and the clinician through an actual diagnosis with what's going on, right? At the standard level. So from there, they're then again, we walk them basically to their clinical partner, the therapist that they will be seeing. And again, it might be needs-based, geographic-based, gender-based. It's kind of wherever the person wants to go with this, we're going to do our best to get them there.
Sure.
We're not solely focused on having veteran clinicians. That's not so important as having the most qualified clinician that has, high competence in first responders, military, police, etc. So that is the whole life cycle, and then their therapy begins, and it's really go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask a question. Is there any prerequisites that they have to have? Like some organizations, you have to be a combat veteran. Some organizations, you have to meet certain, criteria. Is there certain criteria that an individual has to meet in order to work with Headstrong?
Yeah, at the client level.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, generally, we've evolved, right? Back in the day, it was combat veteran, so kind of whatever that meant to someone.
Right.
We're not going to check their DD-214. We don't care if they were honorably or anything other discharged. But it's usually, generally, it was people that deployed. We also early on started treating military sexual trauma, deployment or no deployment, equally as traumatizing as a combat experience, maybe worse. And we've adjusted as needed, right? Because sometimes we just didn't have usage, so we didn't advertise so much. But really, it's about military trauma. Is someone bringing to us treatable military trauma? Are they in a place where we can be effective for them? That's really what we're looking for, to get people better. With that is probably going to come, maybe just under half of our clients are going to bring childhood trauma with it.
Sure.
Or some other non-military related trauma. We'll get into that too with them. That's a part of the whole person. So we're going to treat the person, but generally it's military trauma of some sort. There's something that is bringing them to us that we're going to take that on. Give us your hard cases, it's fine. Give us your easy cases. We're going to take them on. We're going to help. But that's generally the barrier. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean.
Oh, sorry. What are the numbers? Do you know the numbers, Dustin? Like how many veterans you guys have, worked with on the client level over the years since the inception?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, at any given time, we've got about 1,000 people we're helping on any month.
Okay.
Across the country. We started in one city, in one state, New York City. We're in 28 markets across 12 states now, and we're growing. Seattle will be coming online January, February, probably January 2021, and that's just the evolution. Because we're being, obviously due to COVID issues now, the pandemic.
Sure.
We've had to take a drastic stance on how we not only operate but expand, or the lack of expansion. But we're still going. We're ever evolving with mental health. We're ever evolving with our partners. Examples are Starbucks or Harry's on how they support us geographically. But yeah.
So understandably, Headstrong is a nonprofit organization.
Right.
What is one thing that, and maybe it's more than one, but what is one thing that if you could put the call out there on the show, what is one thing that Headstrong needs? If somebody's like, how can I help support them? What is a way that they could do that? Or what is something the organization needs?
Yeah, I mean, we could spend 20 minutes on this. One thing I think is maybe what every nonprofit needs right now.
Sure.
$1 is
Sure.
helpful. Honestly, it all goes to the same place. We're getting people help.
Right.
We're well over 80% in programmatic expenses. I mean, we're doing the right things organizationally. People do get better, but it is driven by philanthropic support. But even sometimes more importantly, you could say conversely that talking about your mental health is also important, period. And it doesn't matter if our name comes up. Sometimes it's about finding that courage or that willingness to just talk about mental health. Like this podcast right now is equally as valuable as someone sending us money.
Sure.
Money is good. Money helps us help your friend and family. That is important. What also helps is help your friend and families if they have the willingness to come get help.
Right.
And the stigma around mental health is not only generational, it's society driven. It's not about weakness. It's not about being broken. You do push-ups because you want to get stronger, right? You should consider mental health care because you want to be efficient or highly capable of empathy and in a good place to just be effective as a person, to be happy as a person.
Right.
That's all very important.
What is something that, you know, over the years, what is something that you've heard as that's a misconception when it comes not only to mental health, the awareness of that, but something that you kind of want to set the record straight as far as what you found is to be conversely true?
There's actually two. So
Okay. Yeah.
sort of related. That only veterans can get veterans better. It's not true. Um, maybe it's a little tongue in cheek. If you had a heart attack as a veteran, would you care if your doctor was a veteran?
Right.
Honestly,
Right.
if you had some life ailment, wouldn't you just want the best and most qualified person to help you and save you?
Right.
I think that's a misconception. I love hanging out with veterans. Sometimes I don't want my therapy from them, right?
Right. You might be going down the wrong way.
I know who
You
they
might
are.
walk out a little bit more twisted.
Yeah,
Depends who
gonna get a
you're
little
hanging
wild
out.
maybe.
Yeah.
But there are also, let me not dig on this. There are really good therapists out there that just happen to be veterans.
Right.
It's just a thing they did, right? But they are a therapist now first. So that's one. The other one's more dangerous to us as a society. That mental health care means you're weak and broken. Being truly strong means as you experience traumatic events in your life, rubbing dirt on it and continuing mission. That works for a while, but what happens when the mission's over and you got to go do another one
Right.
and another one, etc. That works for people's lives too. Car wrecks can be traumatic. Domestic violence is pretty traumatic. Being raped is horribly traumatic. I mean, there are things people need to address in your life. And I promise it is going to be hard to do it. But the outcomes, if you get the right mental health therapy, if you get quality therapy, you will be stronger than you were prior to your traumatic event. That is just, one of the data points we see. People are getting better, staying better, and they're not committing suicide. Their lives are getting better. The society, the society they operate in, their workplace is better, their schoolwork is better, their relationships, period, are more lasting and deep. So this is it works. I've done it. I did the healthcare. I did the therapy. I can tell you it works, right? This thing kept me going.
Nice.
So it's there. But those are, I think, the highest in my mind. I'm sure we can get into micro stuff or out
Sure.
the tails left and right, but those are things that come to mind.
So the veterans, the first responders that are out there right now that, excuse me, that don't have the opportunity right this moment, they're still in theater, they're still doing the everyday, right? And maybe they right now do not have the opportunity to seek, that level of care. What piece of advice would you share with them? Is there, something that you would, if there was a message you can convey to them or somebody struggling today,
Okay.
what would you share with them?
Yeah, let me put this up front. I'm not a doctor. I just play one on TV. Okay.
Sure, right.
But,
The
but I have
disclaimer.
tools. I have tools now that I deeply believe in. You can start by hedging against this stuff. And if you're going through it now actively, there are things that you can calm your nervous system a little bit. You can start engaging in body practice, start the yoga, start the breathing, start communicating that you're feeling certain ways. Um, but do that appropriately. If you are a gun carrier, maybe consider going outside channel to someone qualified to take you on. But do a little research. What we found, while it's not the only modality that works, EMDR is a really effective way to ground your body and mind and process pretty traumatic stuff, and let your body let it go. Remove some of that anxiety around either guilt or physical or just traumatic life events. Um, Start the breathing, start the talking, start exercising. You would not believe that gets you outside of your head for a little bit. And then just be situationally aware of what you are going through. Again, some things might not be a great idea. Maybe it's not a great idea to talk right away. Maybe you do need immediate health care. But just be cognizant of what you're going through. It's hard. Some people are never going to get the help. That's just the way it is. Some people are going to be overzealous about help and just run around and do everything you could imagine that is holistic or whatever.
Right.
But just being aware, being able to slow down a little bit, have your buddy check on your friends, right? There are signs of someone that's going through something wild in their life. Just being aware, slowing down, all of us just a little bit, breathing a little deeper, taking just a minute out of your day to think, right?
Right.
To just listen to your breath, slow down, check your buddies, check yourself. Again, I say all this stuff almost feel like a hypocrite because I was not doing this stuff. It took me years to figure this out. But again, I have pretty solid tools now. I've got a great network. It's access. The more people that are out there listening to you right now, I think this is incredible. Podcasts weren't really happening in 2008 and 9,
Right.
not with this. So
I
I
think.
go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say, you touched on something. You were talking about, get with a buddy or whatever. And I don't know about other branches, but right with the Army, big on battle buddies, right? Start some basic and usually and especially, and I think you were in infantry units, weren't you?
I mean, I was a military intelligence person.
Oh, okay. But same premise. But the same thing is I just think of, hey, watch your buddy pee. You're doing tech checks. I mean, things that you don't want to look at, but you're doing it, right? Because number one, you gotta. Number two, it's you're helping your buddy out. You got their six. And so in a sense, you get to know the other person and saying, that's not like you, like what the hell's going on with you? And I think what you said earlier about getting really good at communicating in a sense, like I feel like shit, or I don't, it's that kind of that changing the narrative, that persona that you're weak, that some people call it, I remember terms like shitbag, broke dick, right? Well, those are real terms, right? And in units saying, their profile, they are not a combat multiplier. And so that gets in the psyche of Joe or whomever. It's not just Joe, but everybody. And I think that's great that there's organizations out there like Headstrong that are making, how do I want to say, filling the gaps because this thing was so much bigger in the beginning than when anybody could have. And I remember back in '03 as well. You're right. You come right out of theater and boom, you're back. You're back home. There was no reintegration. There was no, hey, just fill out this form. You're good.
Right.
It's
I
like
signed myself out of the Army Career and Alumni Program. I signed a thing that said, I've got it figured out. You know why? I wanted to go to the bar.
right.
Let me be honest. I didn't want to go to that.
Yeah.
I didn't think there was value because I hadn't heard there was value. Even more interesting at a policy level, the military should consider, if there's any policymaking generals out there listening to you right now, Dean, myself.
If I have any listeners.
If there are any policymaking generals, maybe consider reevaluating retention. Because it's my understanding that, why would you want to help people get out? Your job is to retain those you've trained. It just makes accounting sense. It's cheaper.
Right.
It's more expensive? Rotating people for society, rotating people out in a really poor way.
Yeah.
I think the education system is brilliant with the idea of alumni networks. They figured it out. University of Virginia, NYU, Stanford, those are pretty sick alumni situations going on across the world. What's the difference? Why can't we have a more robust and more interesting way to exit the military? I got to assume it's cheaper for everyone. Maybe not the military. It probably is a little more expensive, obviously, but it's cheaper for us down the road. I've thought about that a lot.
Right.
It's something that bugs me, but that's where some of this stigma comes from. To drive on until you figure it out later, probably 3 years after you've already left the Army or Navy or Marines or Air Force or Coast Guard.
Yep. Just kind of like, I call it the pencil, analogy. It's like you get used up until you're just a stub, right? And then what do you do with it? You throw it away. And so all of a sudden you got all these little stubby pencils, and it's like, hey, they're still, people aren't just a label.
Right.
They're more than that. So I think that's just awesome what you guys are doing. Dustin, where can they go to find out more about what Headstrong's doing? Maybe they want to donate. Maybe they are a policy making general out there, somebody that works in politics. I have to say that the assistant secretary of the Army is kind of floating out there in the peripherals. So if somebody like that is watching, where can they go to check out about the organization?
Yeah, right on the landing page, getheadstrong.org.
Nice.
It's a wealth of information. Just ourselves in general. We are revamping how we talk about ourselves. We have a new executive director who's really driving data, who's really driving a more professional organization, period. So the website's ever changing. We're doing a better job at being transparent, not only to the people we serve, but those that are interested. So I would say check the website a lot. It's going to be evolving over the next year, just basically, on how we present our who we are, really. But yeah, getheadstrong.org. Start there, learn about us, follow us on social media. It's a way to stay engaged. One of our guys, Matt McCoy, does a really, really cool series called Facing Stigma, where we just talk to people, not necessarily veterans, about mental health care, just about their lives. So it's happening.
And has Headstrong talked about starting maybe their own their own podcast or their own blog or things like that?
Yeah. I mean, we're who knows?
Right.
I mean, we're walking down the line of being more vocal,
Right.
driving more awareness, and yeah, who knows what happens in the future? If Matt McCoy was on right now, he'd say, "Hell yeah, we want a podcast." But it's just about being responsible.
Sure. Right.
We're probably going to do much more long form, much more video in the coming future.
Nice.
So who knows what that evolves into? But we're starting.
Nice.
We're thinking about it.
Good. Well, we look forward to keeping tabs on you guys and seeing what you guys come up with here in the future. Obviously, always refining, adapting, and overcoming any obstacle that's put forward. Any before we close, Dustin, any final remarks? Anything you want to, that we didn't cover that you want to throw out there to the world?
No. Talk about your mental health, and if you can't do that, go get your mental health in check. And there's a lot of ways to do it. We're a small piece of the puzzle, but consider it, please. And I hope the best for everyone listening, and check us out. Stay engaged with us. We'll engage with you. It's
beautifully said. Yeah. Beautifully said. My guest today, Dustin Shryock. Thank you so much for being on the Red, White News Show.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.